Hello Upgraders, it's Will Barron here, your host of the Upgraded Ape Show, and on today's show we have Damien Blenkinsopp. Damien is a digital nomad, which basically means that he's got an online business which frees him up to travel the world whilst he's still working. In today's show we talk about how methylation can affect brain performance, how Damien uses EEG, HRV, which is heart rate variability, and other things to hack his body whilst he's traveling. We talk about why most B vitamin complexes can be dangerous, about the motherfucker gene and how that can affect your methylation, which is really important to understand if you're going to be messing around with B vitamins. And Damien also takes us through the first free clinical test he'd recommend to people who are new to the world of self-tracking and brain tracking. Just want to mention a new product which we added to the Upgraded Ape store this week, which is a premium bundle of both the Get More Done Planner and the Get More Done To-Do Capture system. And now it comes with this absolutely beautiful leather conference wallet. The orders that have gone out so far have included some nice pens and different bits and pieces just to add a little bit of a surprise to the package itself. But this is what I use personally to make sure that I get all the podcasts, the writing, the PR, everything else done that needs to be done throughout the day. And without this system, I'd be absolutely lost. So you can check out the Get More Done Premium Bundle at upgradedape.com. Damien also mentions a lot of products, people, and other things in this interview. So if you go to upgradedape.com and click on Upgraded Radio, you'll be able to find the show notes for this page and all the links there, rather than crashing your car while you're driving, listening to this. We won't want that to be happening, because then we'd have no more listeners. Anyway, don't even know what I'm saying. Let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the Upgraded Ape Show, your daily dose of brain upgrades to help you kick life's ass. And here's your host, Will Barron.
Hi Damien, and welcome to the Upgraded Ape Show.
Thank you, Will. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great stuff. Well, first off, for those in the audience who aren't familiar with the term, can you tell us a little bit about what a digital nomad is before we get into the tracking and hacking side of things?
Sure. Well, a nomad, I think everyone kind of gets that, is someone who never is in the same place, and that's pretty much fitted my life. Most of my life, but more consistently since about 2008, when I started to really just kind of like move around a lot more. What happened was I enabled my job. I became an analyst around 2004, and then steadily I realized that I didn't have to be anywhere in the world because of that. So that's where the digital aspect comes in, because if your work, the main aspect, which is funding your lifestyle, and this is where the digital comes from, is IT, is information based, and it doesn't require a physical location, then you can be anywhere in the world. And many people don't even think about this. They don't realize it. I was an analyst. I was working for a company in the US, and I was actually sitting in Shanghai for a few years, and then a new flatmate said to me, "Wow, is your job like that? You could actually live anywhere." And I was like, that is so right. And from that moment I started just moving around, but I hadn't actually thought of it. I didn't realize at that point that I didn't need to be anywhere. So if all your work is online, it's like conference calls, if it's emails, if it's like doing information type work on computers, if it's programming, there's a lot of programmers who do this. You can live anywhere, and then you can be a nomad. So you have the ability to be a digital nomad and live anywhere and stay for as long as you want.
So do you work freelance now, or do you still work for a company and they've allowed you to do this?
I worked for a company through to 2009 when I stopped working for them. I decided to become an entrepreneur, which is what I always had wanted to be. I actually started many companies before and sold them or stopped them because they weren't working. So it was always something I kept coming back to. But at that point, I decided, I really wanted to develop some internet-based businesses because I like the digital nomad lifestyle. So I wanted to keep that. I like my freedom. So I basically designed some businesses that I'm really passionate about and that fit with that lifestyle at the same time.
Okay, cool. So to paint just a little bit more of a picture about where you are right now and how often you travel, because that will relate to the tracking that we're going to get into shortly. I mean, where are you right now and how long have you been there for?
I'm in a place called San Capistrano right now, which is between San Diego and Los Angeles. I've been bouncing between San Diego and Los Angeles the last month or so. I was also in London last week for a few days. But basically, I'm here right now because I'm talking to a potential business partner about setting up a new business. So it's better face to face, and he's based here. But the other reason is I wanted to get some tests done, and I always come here to get some of my supplements as well, because it's difficult to get some supplements and some of the things, or some of the devices I want to get, the new devices. It's difficult to get them shipped around the world and stuff. It's just much easier to come here, get that kind of stuff done, and then go.
Yeah,
go
for
about my
sure.
business.
Well, that's what I was going to ask about. Do you have a particular set of devices and supplements that you take around with you, regardless of where you're going?
Yeah, I do right now. I mean, this is changing, and I'm upgrading it all the time. So right now I do the easiest thing to do is the heart rate variability. So you just need a chest strap, which is obviously very small, fits in a tiny suitcase with your iPhone or Android. And I do that every morning to keep track of where I'm at, and that really helps me program my life and make decisions about what I'm going to do each day, and whether I'm going to push myself, and whether I need to start hacking some stuff because it's falling, and so, you know, as I mentioned earlier, like we've done a lot of that on our on my podcast, because it's really something I'm interested in, and there's a lot of, it's really developed over the last just few years. So there's a ton of information out there, and there's a lot of scientific backing now. As to, you know, the benefits of it, and how you can use it to optimize different aspects of your life, stressors and so on. So I use that extensively. It's probably the main thing I do. I have a bunch of idiosyncratic, like special things that I need to do, because I've recently come out of chronic illness. So I don't think I really want to bring those up, because it's only for people who've had specific issues with like exposure to toxins and things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
I lived in China for 8 years. Bad idea. So, but the other thing is, like I just got recently, is the Muse Calm. It is this EKG. It's the first consumer-based EKG, so to monitor your brain waves. And I use that for meditation. I think meditation is extremely important. So it really changes your outlook on life and the way you deal with everything in life. But meditation always, for me, has been a bit of an issue, because it was always a bit fuzzy. I don't like fuzzy stuff. I like stuff that I really know it's working, it's having a benefit. I don't like to waste time. So for many years, I've been doing a meditation, but I didn't realize, like, is this actually having a benefit? How can I track this? How can I actually see that this is having a benefit? And there were anecdotal benefits. Like, I could see my mind was clearer and I was less distracted, but I don't like to rely on that, because, you know, it's subjective. So I first started using the HeartMath device, which is it's a spin on heart rate variability. It's a bit more specific to monitor, and I would use that during my meditation to see, and that helped me to make sure that it's a kind of feedback. You know, so I'd be getting feedback constantly from that device, the HeartMath device, as to whether my meditation was coherent or not, and that was pretty useful. But it was still disengaged. It was quite far away from actual brain waves, and you know, so I want to get to the brainwave level. So just in the last, like, that's one of the things I picked up on this recent trip, is the Muse Calm, which is, you know, this device that fits on your head, and then it interacts with your iPhone app, and it helps you see when you're calm, you're meditating, so you can meditate with it and see exactly when you get disturbed and when you don't. So it's basically a really good, like, thing to do if you're into meditation, I think, to get up to speed quickly on meditation and make sure that you're not getting off track.
So is that giving you data points that you can look back and see your progress over time?
Yeah, exactly. You can really see the impact of, like, stressors and things like that, because you'll have a much harder session. Too much coffee. Like, you really do see, it gives you scores every day. It says what percentage you're in alpha waves versus beta waves and so on. So whether you're calm or versus like a highly thinking state. So it gives you a daily thing you can set yourself goals as well, to get better over time. So, you know, that it's a great little device, and it's the first one, and it's also like, I think it's got a lot more potential, because that's the first app that's come out, but it's an EKG. It can do anything that you develop an app for. So I'm hoping there's going to be more apps coming out for that soon, for me to play around with other stuff.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. That's news to me as well. It's not something I've come across before.
Cool.
So we'll link to that in the show notes. So what other supplements or hacks do you have that you do and you tend to travel with?
Okay, the biggest ones. I mean, I'm taking something from my mitochondria, which is essential for me, but I should think that it benefits everyone, is this stuff called NT-factor, which uses lipid replacement therapy to replace the membranes of your mitochondria. Mitochondria are, like, I don't want to jump into technical stuff here. So mitochondria.
Oh, go technical, dive in there.
Yeah. Well, I just want to make sure, like, I actually explain it. So Mitochondria are basically power cells, your power batteries for your cells, for everything you do, right? You need your mitochondria to live. They generate all your energy. These things get damaged over your life. They can get, and a big part of that damage is the membranes that they have, and they run electrons around the membranes. So as soon as the membranes get damaged, you basically haven't got the conductivity. It's kind of like a battery, right? If you think about it. So this helps to replace the lipids. Your membranes are made up of lipids, and so rebuild them. So this has made a huge impact to me, and I got to thank Dr. Courtney Craig. I work with her for putting me onto this, and recommending that I get on this because it's made a big difference. But I think that this could actually make a difference to pretty much anyone because everyone has damaged mitochondria. I specifically had really bad documented damage with labs and stuff because of what I've been through. But like a lot of people have damaged mitochondria, and it leads to aging, cancers, you name it, chronic fatigue, all sorts of things. It can turn out in symptoms. So if you've got any like health symptoms or like fatigue or you just feel older, there's probably some mitochondria aspect to that involved. So that's a pretty cool thing. I take methylation supports, which most people can probably benefit from, but it's a little bit more complicated as to what you should take. Methylation is a process in your body which it does all sorts of things. It methylates your genes, so it has a role in epigenetics. Epigenetics is basically it's a layer which sits on top of your genes. So everyone knows the genes are your blueprint for how you are in life. Epigenetics sits on top of that, and it tells your body which genes are turned on and off. So even if you have a blueprint, like a whole bunch of them will be turned off. Methylation is the process which turns off genes. So for instance, what happened with me is my methylation wasn't working as well because of like stuff that's happening. But this can happen to everyone due to genetic mutations. Everyone has some due to environmental toxins, just life in general. And so your methylation won't necessarily be working. Some people are born with it, like it's not working optimally. And some people through, life experience, the environment and so on, what happens during life, they don't have an optimal process. And of course, aging, it just tends to deteriorate as with everything else. So if it's not working optimally, this can mean that some genes get turned on because they're not methylated. Methylation turns them off. That can be a real problem. All sorts of funky stuff can start happening depending on your genes, right? So, for me, I had some funky things coming up, which new allergies and stuff, which I think this is responsible for. And also just energy, detoxification. Methylation is involved in so many different things in your body. It's pretty key. So for me, I'm taking things like S-adenosyl methionine, which is really key because mine is low. You can get tests for this kind of stuff. So people say you are under-methylated or over-methylated, and basically you need a balance. If you have too much SAMe or too much or too little SAMe, you can, your process isn't running smoothly. It isn't giving it isn't creating the types of proteins and stuff that you need, and the enzymes aren't working optimally. So you need to just have a balance there. You don't want to be too much, too little. So that's why it's a bit of a more art in terms of methylation. I had Dr. Ben Lynch. He's really deep into this on my podcast, and he talks a lot about that. And he's got crazy maps about it all. So it's really a cutting edge kind of area. But there are simple process protocols you can use to improve your methylation. And if you've heard of the motherfucker gene, the MTHFR,
yeah,
right. So this is actually part of methylation, right? So that's a key genetic defect that about 40 to 60% of people have in some way, which is affecting their methylation, and that's why it's so bad, and it leads to cardiovascular risk and so on. People have heard of that. It's actually methylation, which is the issue there. So that's why it's actually a very general issue. Most people have some kind of defect and something going on which isn't optimal in that. And if you improve that process, it can make it can help you perform optimally, and it can fix health conditions and so on. So that's a really important area. The other ways you can help that process is with B vitamins like B12, active B12 and folates, which if it's not functioning properly, that's a key area. So I'd say everyone should have a multi complex B vitamin, but it has to be the right ones. There's a lot of vitamins on the market which are full of crap, cheap vitamins like cyanocobalamin is B12, which is made from cyanide with with B12. And if you think about it, do you want cyanide in your body? Not really. It's cheap to make, but cyanide's a poison, and your body has to detoxify that afterwards. And if you have methylation issues, and it's why you're taking it, then you're just adding to the toxic burden, which your body's already kind of struggling with because it hasn't got an optimal methylation process. So that's an idea, but basically a complex B12 vitamin. Like I like Thorn because they have this one called hash 12, like complex hash 12. It's like the 12th version of it, which has got the right ones in it. You have to be careful because most of them don't have the right ones. They have folic acid in it as well, which is bad. It's a synthetic folate. So the problem with these kind of areas is you have to be really specific about the type of supplements you're taking, because the supplement industry is kind of full of like cheaper versions, basically, which will not do what we want and can do damage versus good things.
Well, let's take a step back here. Can you tell us about what tests you did to find these problems in the first place? And I guess what are the top 3 things someone should look at if they've never done any testing previously?
Sure. Well, so I starting from the first one I ever started tracking was CRP, C-reactive protein. You want the high sensitivity one, so they call it HSCRP. This one is a measure of inflammation, and it's inflammation. There's lots of different markers for inflammation, but this one is pretty broad, and it's relevant to a lot of the health conditions that people suffer from, and exercise as it goes. So if you exercise way too much and you overtrain, then that's something that's going to affect you, your performance, and you'll get higher inflammation, and it will start have a negative feedback loop, basically, and it will contribute to aging, cancers, and blah, blah, blah. So you want a low inflammation. You want low inflammation in your body, or at least you just want you want an inflammation spike, for instance. When you have an illness, you're going to have an inflammation spike to deal with it, and then it should go straight back down, right? You need that inflammation spike to deal with it. Or with exercise, you're going to get an inflammation spike because we're adapting to the stressor of the exercise, right? So you want it to spike, but you want it to go straight back down again. But when it starts getting chronically elevated, this will show up in the CRP. So you want yours as low as possible. Mine's like 0.1 most of the time, sometimes lower. I mean, like most labs will either have a lower limit of 0.2 or 0.1. Some will go lower, depending on who it is. And a lot of people will have like maybe 0.8 when they start, or you're getting into trouble when you're over 1. And this is actually, there's a lot of studies that link this to cardiovascular disease, for instance, because that's directly related to inflammation. I would bet that it's directly related to cancer as well, but that's a much longer term kind of study. And so there hasn't been as much work done on that as with cardiovascular disease. So there's a really tight link with cardiovascular disease. It's one of the main markers you should look at, rather than the lipids, right? It's a much better marker than LDL, for instance, which is pretty useless in terms of your cardiovascular risk. And I don't know, you probably had someone on the show talking about that already.
Yeah, well, we've had Jimmy Moore on, as we mentioned previous. I think he's coming on your show soon as well, isn't he?
Yep, right, this week. So yeah, he's a great guy. Great interview there. So what else is there? There's liver function tests. Your liver is one of your most important organs for detoxifying your body. The world is toxic today. That's just the way it is compared to where it was before. And this is something I've learned about through my condition. I've obviously been exposed to way more toxins than most people living in China for a long time and other dubious places. But the fact is that it's all around us. And the more I've learned about it, the more I've learned that really to feel great, to perform great, you have to really upregulate your detoxification systems, and you have to make sure your liver and these kind of organs are supported. I've had a lot of problem with my liver enzymes, so that will show up in your liver function profile. So this basically covers a whole range of markers. It's a stack of markers. It's pretty cheap, and because it's such a routine test, like hospitals will run this all the time. And you don't want elevated markers in your enzymes, basically. That's the main thing to look at. And it means that there's a bit of damage going on and your liver's struggling. And then there's some supplements you can take to try and, or you can try and look at your life, what kind of toxins are going on in your life, or what's going on that could be raising those. So that's a great test that everyone should get done routinely, say every 3 months, I think, if you want to stay on the ball.
Awesome stuff. And can both of these tests be done? You mentioned that liver tests can be done in most hospitals. Is this similar throughout the world? And the second part of that question is, when you are traveling, do you get these tests done or tend to get them done in the States?
Yeah, these 2 tests I gave you are the simplest, most basic tests that are available everywhere in the world. So you shouldn't have a problem. The only problem you can come up with sometimes with the CRP is, and I've had this in the UK, by the way, the NHS doesn't use the appropriate marker. They use the CRP, which is the C-reactive protein. It's not sensitive. It's not the high sensitivity one. So it's pretty much useless from a proactive standpoint. If you want to know if you have heart disease or not, or you've got the potential to get it, it will kind of tell you that, because they just like, is it above 1? Is it above 3? Or is it above 5? That's all they look for. But you want to know like how low it is. You want to know like, because if you're exercising too much and stuff like that, and it's up to 0.8, 0.9, you want to know that versus 0.1, right? And it's all relative. You should be trying to get it down lower over time, because it goes up with aging naturally, and diet also plays a huge role in it, right? So if you're eating too many crappy carbs, grains, sugars, and all of the other kind of crap, and other inflammatory kind of foods, then you're going to have a high CRP. Because of that, and it could be like 0.8, 0.9, which is not good. But they're like in the UK, for instance, they won't see that. So you have to be very specific that you want the HSCRP, the high sensitivity one. Everywhere else in the world I've been able to get it. In London, I can get it from a place called BioLab. That's the private lab I go to when I'm in the UK for something. But elsewhere, like in hospitals around the world, I haven't had a problem when I ask for it specifically. You just have to be pretty, determined about like making sure that they're doing that and not something else. So I would say that like if you're traveling, that's the one thing that you have to be very careful of, that they're actually giving you what you want. And sometimes the measures they give you are different. That's not really an issue. You can convert them. But it is an issue where they're doing a different test. And with these two tests I gave you, mostly it's not a problem. It should be pretty standardized.
Okay, cool. Well, do you do anything, Damien, to track or hack your brain health? Whether that be nootropics or any other supplements or tests, other than heart rate variability, which does have an effect. And also we've touched on meditation. Okay, brain health, yeah. I actually had some brain issues, so I really had to hack it a lot. Methylation is a key thing, again. SAMe, people often take it for depression, to give you an idea, because if you have low methylation, there's a interview I did with in episode 2 on my podcast, with a guy called William, and he is really, really key onto all of that, the brain conditions and how they relate to methylation and other chemicals in your body. That's a really interesting guy to talk to, and listen to that interview if you want. But that talks about undermethylation and how it affects your brain, and so that'd be actually one of the first areas I'd look at if you want to optimize your brain. If you're ADD, if you're anxious, if you're depressed, if you got anything that isn't like, I'm just feeling good. Like actually, because like for a lot of my life, because I have a few mutations in my methylation process. For a lot of my life, I was like, it's normal to be anxious on Sundays, and or just like kind of down on Sundays, and I was kind of like moody growing up, and I thought all of these were normal. But actually, now that I've optimized stuff, I feel great every single day, and I'm in a great mood every single day, and I'm just so excited about life and passionate about life, where that would happen sometimes, but it wouldn't be like all the time. And yeah, I get tired at the end of the day, and I'm obviously not as passionate, and then I go to sleep, but I wake up in the morning and I'm passionate again. And I think if you have stuff optimized, that is like what you should, that's normal. That's what you should feel like. We should feel great. So if you're not feeling great, I think there's something to look at, and methylation is probably one of the first places to look at, because that really has a huge impact on moods and stability and things like that. Well, you're obviously a very positive guy. How much do you think mindset versus the actual neurochemistry affects the mood, and, as you just said, how excited you are day to day?
It's interesting. I've been involved in the self-development industry for a long time, and I've actually got a business in there. So I coach people, and I've got products out there for this kind of stuff too. But so I've done a lot of work on myself, and yes, that helps. Meditation definitely is a huge help as well. So it's a bit of both. To be quite honest, you need the right mindsets. You need to still the mind, which is kind of like programming your mind. It's like running over the neural pathways you want to use, instead of letting your brain just run riot all the time, because you've never tried to control it and to kind of streamline the way it operates. So meditation is what helps with that a lot, and establishing mindsets that you see as positive is hugely important. But for a lot of people, and I see this in one of my coaching businesses, is that like they do have an underlying biological thing. So I'd say in about 50% of people, like I have to say, hey, I want to look at your like biology things and tweak that, because I think that's like a block. We've taught, like what I like to do is like do the mindsets, do the meditation. And if you still have issues and you're doing it properly, then we have to look at biology to see what's actually holding you back, and the biochemistry isn't quite right there. And there's nothing you can do with a mindset if you're anxious all the time biologically, because that anxiety is always going to be there. You can control it, but it's very draining in terms of energy, and you don't want to just be trying to control it all the time. And I had experience with that because when my brain got a bit messed up, for the process, I got high inflammation in my brain because of my methylation and so on. I got extreme anxiety and paranoia, and the way I was dealing with that was like having to control it. I was always like, what's going on? I don't know why at this age I'm already all of a sudden getting this. And it took me a while to find out what it was, but I was expending so much energy to basically push all of that stuff out all the time. And it's just exhausting. So that's not the way you want to deal with it. If you have something like that, you want to deal with it biologically, and then you can use your brain for all the cool stuff that we want to do.
For sure. And that's a really interesting way that you put that you're right. And it would be tiring to try and cope and use coping mechanisms to solve it from a mindset perspective. And I've never really thought about it that way, but it was well put.
Thank you, man.
Are you cool to do some quickfire questions to learn a little bit more about yourself?
Let's go.
Are you a morning or evening person?
Morning.
If you could punch someone in the face, anyone, who could it be?
Punch someone in the face. It would be someone, I can't give a specific person because I don't know, but one thing I hate in life is bureaucracy for the sake of bureaucracy, and I've come up across it a lot in my life through consulting and through the health establishment, governments and so on, and rules for no reason. So I would punch the official who's creating all the bureaucratic rules that have no purpose.
Good answer. If you could recommend one book to the Upgraded Ape audience, what would it be?
The Obstacle is the Way is my current favorite. I've listened to the audiobook like 40 plus times, and it's if in terms of mindsets, I would say this is gold, and I would just listen to that over and over again. Just did that this year, and I would say it's revolutionized the way I approach problem solving.
Yeah, Ryan Holiday.
That's right.
He's done a really excellent podcast episode on London Real. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's definitely worth a watch as well.
I haven't, thank you.
If you had 10 hours to spend in a car with someone, you could choose anyone, who would it be?
Well, a few people come to mind. I just like people I could really learn from. Guys like, I just have to choose one, right?
Top three.
Oh, top three? Okay. Well, I'll put Tony Robbins in there.
Yeah,
I'll put Tim Ferriss in there. You can see, I'm obviously a digital nomad, so I've learned a lot from him. But and he's got a very similar mind to me in terms of like quantifying stuff and making decisions based on data. So I think we'd have a lot to chat about. And then I would take Abraham Lincoln, if he's still alive. I think he's an interesting
Why
guy.
Abraham Lincoln?
He just dealt with a whole lot of crazy situations. It's pretty amazing what he achieved given the context of his decision making and what was going on, and I think the way he approached problems and managing relationships and the politics and everything was pretty amazing if you look into the story.
Nice. Okay, Damien, well, I've got one final question for you, and it's something I've asked everyone on the show so far. If you could go back in time and speak with your younger self, what would be one piece of advice you'd give him to help upgrade his brain and help him get more out of life?
Stay out of China. No. I would actually, the one thing I would say is, and this might be true for a lot of people, is I had things that I wanted to do, which I didn't follow, which were coming from my heart. What I actually did was I went into a career of management consulting and things that, are expected in society if you want to be successful. And, but what I really wanted to do was more unique, and it was entrepreneurship, and it was like following some of my passions. And I just wish I'd jumped on that train earlier instead of waiting like 10 years or whatever it was.
And what stopped you doing that? Was it just the push of society dictating?
It was social, I would call it society programming. My parents obviously wanted that for me, and they actually fought me a lot, because if you think about it, all of our parents, they grew up in this world where you have secure jobs and all of this, and entrepreneurship, and less run paths in technology, in self-help and whatever I was interested in. They're not in our parents' nature, so they wanted me to be a management consultant or lawyer or something like that. So I became a management consultant, and they really liked that, and they wanted me to stick with that. But for many years, I was like struggling and in pain, like emotional pain, and I was just really unhappy in that work, and I didn't know why. And it was a kind of journey of self-discovery to see that like that wasn't for me, and I had to let go. And I would have many arguments with my dad, for example, and he'd be like, no, it's a great job, it's secure. And I did an MBA, and after that I ran off to China instead of getting a good management consulting job or something in London, which would be far easier and more straightforward, more money, and all of that kind of stuff, more prestigious. My dad argued with me about that as well, and he's coming from a different perspective. So that was the kind of things I was struggling with, instead of just trusting my heart and going with it.
Mm-hmm. And I know there's other entrepreneurs that listen that live the digital nomad life. I've had the same conversation with them as you've just mentioned to me. So yeah, it's good to hear your perspective on it. And did your parents come round to the idea, or are they still not quite understanding of it?
Oh no, now now they love it. I think they're really proud of me, and they told me they're proud of me. So it's just like I say, it's just a far removal from where they've come from. And so, it's a completely different perspective. And this happens every single generation. I'm going to be telling my kid, I'll want to tell him, I'm going to try not to, but I'll want to say him, hey, you should be living your life the way I did. Because that's what got me successful.
Dad, I just want to travel in space. I just want to do this. You'll be like, no, it's dangerous.
Exactly.
Don't do that.
He'll be like, I want to go out into space. That's what everyone's doing these days. And I'll be like, that's crazy. But he'll be right and I'll be wrong. So.
Amazing stuff. Well, Damien, thanks very much for coming on the show today. Can you give us a bit of information about what you're working on currently and where our audience can find out more about yourself and your podcast?
Sure. My main project right now is what I'm building is the Quantified Body podcast. And this comes from all of my experiences, chronic health issues and performance enhancement over the last 8 years. It's collecting data and making decisions based on data to improve my biology has really become what I've had to rely on, because I went down so many wrong routes with the medical establishment and other people and just books and so on without actually knowing. So that's what it's all focused on. It's kind of there's a quantified self movement. So I got involved in that, and that, helped. And so there's probably a lot of people from there that I'm going to be interviewing. But it's really just to anyone who's focused on data, I'm going to be interviewing, so it's practitioners that are focused on data, people that are doing their own N=1 experiments, and they've collected their own data to make decisions. So anyone who's using data to make better decisions about their health, their performance, longevity.
Awesome stuff. And we'll link to that in the show notes as well.
Thanks, man. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, thanks again for your time. Thanks for coming on the Upgraded Ape Show.
Yeah, man. It's been a pleasure to be on. Thanks for the great questions.